He asked his ex to join them for Christmas dinner. Instead of anger, his wife simply smiled. The tension that followed will keep you on the edge of your seat. The holiday season had painted the city in lights and soft cheer, yet for Adrian Kane, the glow outside did little to ease the tension inside. The CEO of a leading tech company sat at his sleek desk, reviewing plans for the upcoming Christmas dinner. A single thought clung stubbornly to his mind. He had invited someone from his past to this celebration, someone who had once held a special place in his heart. The question lingered, pressing on him more than any boardroom decision ever had. Could this dinner remain simple and cordial, or would it open doors to emotions he had long set aside? His gaze drifted to the snow-flecked streets below, each light reflecting the city's festive joy, and he felt a mixture of anticipation and unease. Tonight would test not only his composure but also the depth of trust in his marriage. This wasn't a story of confrontation. It was a story of subtle tension, the kind that whispers quietly through glances, gestures, and moments that demand sincerity. It was a challenge that promised reflection, lessons, and perhaps a deeper understanding of love's true strength. Have you ever faced a moment where someone from your past reappeared unexpectedly, stirring feelings you thought were long gone? Perhaps it was an old friend, a former colleague, or even a past romance. Most of us pause, wondering how to handle such encounters without upsetting the balance of our present lives. Adrian's situation was one many could relate to. He had built a life filled with achievement, love, and security, yet a single dinner threatened to test all of it. Could he navigate the evening gracefully, without letting old memories cloud the present? Could his spouse, Serena, remain confident in their bond, even with a chapter from the past walking through the door? This is the moment that asks a question each of us encounters at some point. Can trust truly withstand challenges, especially when the past unexpectedly intersects with the present? For viewers, it's more than curiosity. It's a personal reflection. How would you respond if placed in Adrian's shoes? Would you feel confident, hesitant, or conflicted? Adrian had never faced a situation quite like this. The thought of Maren arriving at his home for Christmas stirred a quiet tension within him. Their past was filled with fond memories, shared laughter, late-night conversations, and dreams once spoken aloud, but life had pulled them in different directions. Now, the prospect of seeing her again was both unsettling and strangely nostalgic. Serena's awareness of his unease added another layer to the challenge. She had always been perceptive, reading subtle changes in his expressions, noting the moments when his mind wandered. Yet, she had chosen to trust him completely, demonstrating a confidence that would have reassured anyone. Adrian admired her strength, but even admiration could not erase the nervous anticipation he felt. The central question hovered: could this dinner be a simple reunion, or would lingering emotions surface? The answer was uncertain, and it was precisely this uncertainty that made the evening both tense and compelling. For the audience, it was the turning point, the moment where curiosity meets emotional stakes. The scene was set, the characters positioned, and the tension quietly simmered, ready to unfold. As the evening drew near, Adrian could feel the weight of anticipation pressing gently on his shoulders. The thought of Maren arriving brought both curiosity and caution. How would the dinner play out? Would old emotions resurface, or would the evening pass smoothly, leaving everyone with a sense of warmth and closure? For viewers, this was the moment to lean in and wonder alongside him. Would love and trust triumph over awkwardness and uncertainty? Could a marriage grounded in honesty and patience handle such a delicate challenge with grace? These questions lingered, inviting the audience to continue watching, eager to see how the situation would resolve and what lessons might be learned. It was more than a dinner. It was a test of character, a gentle reminder that trust, respect, and understanding are the foundations of meaningful relationships. By the time the door opened, the stage was perfectly set for moments of tension, reflection, and perhaps even quiet triumph. Adrian Kane was known publicly as a decisive leader and strategic thinker. As the head of a fast-growing technology firm, he had built his reputation on discipline, foresight, and balance. Years of focused effort had rewarded him with professional respect, financial comfort, and a sense of accomplishment few ever reached. Yet beyond boardrooms and business milestones, Adrian valued something far more personal, the life he had built at home. That life centered around Serena. Serena Kane carried herself with quiet confidence. She was thoughtful, observant, and steady in ways that anchored those around her. Where Adrian calculated outcomes, Serena understood emotions. She believed in communication over assumptions and trust over fear. Her presence brought calm, not through control, but through assurance. She didn't demand loyalty, she inspired it. Those close to her often noticed how she listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, her words carried intention. Then there was Maren. Maren belonged to a chapter of Adrian's life, shaped by ambition and discovery. During their younger years, they had shared hope, curiosity, and a vision of what life might become. While Adrian pursued structure and leadership, Maren followed creativity and expression. Their separation had not come from conflict but from direction, two people growing in different ways. Time had softened their history, turning it into memory rather than longing. Now, these three lives were about to intersect under one roof on Christmas Eve. Each carried their own expectations. Adrian hoped for calm. Serena trusted in honesty. Maren sought closure without discomfort. None of them could fully predict how the evening would unfold, but all understood that this dinner would quietly reveal the strength of character, trust, and emotional maturity. What made this dinner meaningful was not the invitation itself, but what it represented. Inviting a former partner into a shared marital space carries unspoken risks. Emotions may surface unexpectedly. Misunderstandings can form in silence. Even a simple glance or pause can be misread when history exists. For Adrian, the stakes were deeply personal. He was confident in his loyalty, yet aware that intentions alone do not control perception. One uncomfortable moment could plant doubt where none had existed. One poorly chosen word could shift the tone of the evening. He understood that leadership at work did not automatically translate to emotional ease at home. For Serena, the challenge was different. Her trust was deliberate, not naive. She knew that love required courage, the courage to believe without constant reassurance. Still, she also understood that emotional strength is tested when situations stretch comfort zones. Her calm smile was not indifference. It was a conscious choice to stand firmly in confidence rather than fear. And for Maren, the risk lay in presence. Walking into Adrian's home meant facing what had changed and accepting what could never return. She did not want to disrupt harmony or reopen chapters already closed. Her hope was simple: dignity, respect, and peace. This dinner carried no raised voices or dramatic confrontations, yet everything was at stake. Trust could deepen or quietly fracture. Love could be affirmed or questioned. The outcome would not be shaped by grand gestures, but by restraint, honesty, and emotional awareness. That was the tension waiting at the table. Before this story continues, take a moment to reflect on what's already unfolding. Situations like this don't rely on dramatic moments. They depend on choices, restraint, and trust. And that's what makes them so relatable. Welcome to Lord of Hearts, a channel dedicated to meaningful stories that explore love, character, and life lessons that matter. If stories that challenge emotions, strengthen perspective, and leave you thinking long after they end resonate with you, this space was created for you. As the evening approaches and the tension settles quietly into place, ask yourself, how would you handle a moment like this? Would trust come easily, or would doubt try to take hold? If this story has already captured your attention, take a second to support the channel. Like the video to help more people discover stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters here. And subscribe to Lord of Hearts for more stories that speak to the heart and mind. Now, with the stage set and emotions carefully balanced, the story moves forward. The days leading up to Christmas passed more slowly than Adrian expected. Each morning, he followed his usual routine: early meetings, performance reviews, strategy calls, but his focus drifted more often than he liked. The upcoming dinner lingered in his thoughts, quietly persistent. It wasn't fear that unsettled him, but awareness. Awareness that emotions, even when long resolved, can surface when least expected. Adrian had faced far more complex challenges in his professional life. He had negotiated high-stakes deals, navigated market uncertainty, and led teams through demanding transitions. Yet this felt different. This situation required no spreadsheets or forecasts, only emotional clarity and restraint. He replayed small details in his mind, how Maren might greet Serena, whether conversation would feel natural, whether silence might say more than words. At home, Serena noticed these subtle shifts. She saw the way Adrian paused longer than usual while tying his tie, how his gaze lingered near the window after phone calls ended. She did not confront him immediately. She understood that sometimes reassurance works best when given gently, not demanded. The apartment began to transform as Christmas approached. Boxes of decorations were brought out from storage, ornaments collected over years, each with a story attached. Serena handled them with care, placing them thoughtfully around the living space. The tree stood tall near the window, its branches gradually filled with soft lights and carefully chosen pieces. Adrian joined her, hanging ornaments while they exchanged quiet conversation. As they worked side by side, Serena spoke calmly. She reminded him that the home they were preparing was not defined by who entered it, but by the bond they shared within it. Her tone carried certainty, not reassurance born of doubt, but confidence rooted in understanding. Adrian listened, absorbing her words more deeply than she realized. Choosing the menu became an unexpected source of comfort. They discussed dishes that balanced tradition with simplicity, meals meant to welcome, not impress. Serena suggested flavors that felt warm and familiar. Adrian agreed, appreciating how intentional she was about creating an atmosphere that encouraged ease rather than formality. Every decision felt purposeful, shaping the evening into something steady and respectful. As they planned, moments of quiet intimacy emerged naturally. A hand resting briefly on another's shoulder. A shared smile when memories surfaced of past holidays spent together. These gestures required no explanation. They spoke of years spent building trust, of choosing one another repeatedly through changing seasons of life. Despite Serena's calm, Adrian still wrestled privately with his thoughts. He questioned whether inviting Maren had been necessary, whether it risked discomfort for the sake of politeness. Yet each time doubt arose, it was tempered by Serena's composed presence. Her lack of suspicion reminded him that trust thrives when nurtured consistently, not tested through avoidance. Midway through the preparations, as the apartment filled with warmth and quiet anticipation, this is a moment for you as the viewer to pause. Situations involving past relationships are rarely simple. Everyone handles them differently, shaped by personal experience and emotional boundaries. Share your thoughts in the comments. How would you approach a moment like this? Would openness come easily, or would hesitation guide your choices? As evening approached, the couple stepped back to take in their work. The apartment felt complete, not perfect but welcoming. Candles were placed thoughtfully, casting a soft glow that complemented the decorations. Music played gently in the background, chosen more for mood than volume. Everything reflected intention, not excess. Serena changed into comfortable clothes, moving through the space with ease. Adrian watched her briefly, struck by how grounded she seemed. Her confidence did not stem from certainty about the evening's outcome, but from trust in the values they shared. That realization eased his remaining tension. Later, as they sat together with warm drinks in hand, Serena spoke again, this time more personally. She reminded Adrian that life rarely offers situations without complexity, and that growth often comes from navigating those moments with grace. She expressed that her trust in him was not conditional. It was built through consistency, honesty, and shared effort over time. Adrian responded quietly, acknowledging how deeply he appreciated her understanding. He admitted his nervousness without hesitation, not as weakness, but as honesty. The exchange strengthened their connection, reinforcing that emotional intelligence thrives where communication is open and respectful. As Christmas Eve drew closer, the preparation shifted from physical tasks to emotional readiness. Adrian centered himself, reminding himself of who he was and what mattered most. Serena remained steady, her reassurance present without being overbearing. Together, they prepared not just a home, but a mindset rooted in patience and mutual respect. The lesson woven through these moments was clear. Relationships are not defined by the absence of challenge, but by how challenges are met. Trust grows when partners choose understanding over assumption, calm over reaction, and communication over silence. By the time the final details were set, the apartment no longer felt like a stage for tension, but a space ready for sincerity. Whatever the evening brought, Adrian and Serena were prepared. Not because they controlled the situation, but because they trusted one another enough to face it together. And with that, Christmas Eve stood just beyond the door. Have you ever faced a situation where someone from the past reappeared in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. How would you handle it? Don't forget to like this video if you believe trust and patience are the keys to navigating sensitive moment. The doorbell rang softly, its sound cutting through the gentle music playing in the living room. Adrian's chest tightened for a brief moment, a quiet signal that the evening had truly begun. He stood from the sofa, smoothing the front of his jacket out of habit rather than necessity. Serena noticed the movement and reached for his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Her touch was steady, deliberate, grounding him before he took another step. The apartment glowed with warmth. Candlelight flickered across polished surfaces, reflecting off ornaments and glassware. The Christmas tree stood proudly near the window, its lights casting a gentle shimmer across the room. Everything felt calm, carefully prepared, yet the air held a subtle tension, the kind that accompanies moments of significance. Adrian opened the door. Maren stood there, holding a small gift, wrapped in muted paper. She looked composed, though her eyes revealed a hint of uncertainty. Time had changed her in subtle ways, confidence shaped by experience, expression softened by maturity. She offered a polite smile that carried both familiarity and restraint. "Thank you for inviting me," Maren said, her voice measured. "I hope I'm not late." "You're right on time," Adrian replied. His tone was courteous, calm, and intentionally neutral. "Please, come in." Before he could say more, Serena stepped forward. "I'm Serena," she said warmly, extending her hand. "I'm glad you could join us." The greeting was sincere, without hesitation or formality. Maren accepted the handshake, visibly relieved by the ease of the moment. "Thank you," Maren said. "Your home is beautiful." Serena smiled. "We wanted it to feel welcoming." As Maren entered, Adrian closed the door behind her, the sound quiet but final. For a brief second, all three stood together in the entryway, aware of one another's presence, measuring tone and intention. Then Serena gestured toward the living room. "Please, make yourself comfortable. Can I take your coat?" Maren nodded, handing it over. "That would be great." The transition was smooth, guided by Serena's composure. The earlier tension softened, replaced by cautious ease. They moved into the living room, where the soft music continued to play, blending seamlessly with the warmth of the space. They sat together, angled slightly toward one another rather than directly across, a subtle choice that reduced formality. Serena poured warm drinks, offering Maren a choice before serving Adrian. The gesture was small, but thoughtful. "So," Serena began, her tone conversational, "Adrian mentioned you're working on a new exhibition." Maren's posture relaxed slightly. "Yes, it's been a long process but rewarding. I've been exploring themes of growth and transition." "That sounds meaningful," Serena replied. "Creative work often reflects more than we expect." Adrian listened, observing the exchange. Serena wasn't performing kindness. She was genuinely curious. That realization stirred something within him. He noticed how naturally she guided the conversation, how attentively she listened without interruption. As the discussion continued, Adrian contributed thoughtfully, careful not to dominate. He asked Maren about her work, but also redirected focus to Serena when appropriate. It was a delicate balance, one he navigated intentionally. At one point, Serena laughed softly at a comment Adrian made about a failed attempt at holiday baking years earlier. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, the gesture instinctive and brief. Adrian felt it immediately, not as a distraction, but as reassurance. Their connection was quiet, present without display. Maren noticed. She observed how Adrian leaned subtly towards Serena when speaking, how his eyes sought her reaction before finishing a thought. These details spoke louder than words. Any lingering uncertainty she had carried dissolved gradually, replaced by understanding. Dinner was announced shortly after. Serena led the way, guiding the transition smoothly. The table was set simply, candles placed at intervals, casting a soft glow that encouraged conversation rather than distraction. As they ate, the discussion flowed naturally: work, travel, memories of shared acquaintances from years past. The past was acknowledged, but never lingered on. When Maren mentioned a memory involving Adrian, she spoke respectfully, keeping her tone light. Adrian responded briefly, then shifted the conversation forward. Serena observed it all, her expression calm. There was no need for correction or reassurance. Trust moved quietly beneath every exchange. Adrian found himself reflecting as the evening progressed. He noticed how different this felt from his expectations. The nervous anticipation he had carried for days slowly eased, replaced by clarity. This dinner was not reopening old chapters, it was affirming the life he had chosen. He watched Serena speak, articulate and composed, her presence anchoring the room. In that moment, he understood something deeply. Love wasn't proven through exclusion or control, but through confidence and mutual respect. As plates were cleared and conversation softened, gratitude surfaced quietly. Gratitude for Serena's grace. Gratitude for the maturity that allowed this moment to exist without discomfort. Gratitude for a partnership that had grown strong enough to face complexity without fear. Maren, too, felt a sense of peace. She recognized the bond between Adrian and Serena not as something fragile, but as something well-established. Any lingering emotion from her past had transformed into appreciation for how time and choice shape lives differently. When Serena rose to bring dessert, Adrian stood to help without being asked. Their movements were practiced, coordinated, a reflection of shared rhythm. As they passed one another in the kitchen, Serena brushed her fingers lightly against his hand. Adrian met her eyes, offering a small smile filled with gratitude. The moment passed unnoticed by others, but it carried weight. As they returned to the table, the atmosphere felt lighter. The tension that had once lingered had given way to calm connection. What remained was conversation shaped by respect and an unspoken acknowledgement of emotional maturity from all sides. The evening had not been dramatic. It had been honest, and sometimes honesty is the most powerful outcome of all. Dinner unfolded at a measured pace, guided by conversation rather than formality. The table, softly illuminated by candlelight, became a space where words carried intention and pauses felt natural rather than strained. Outside, the city remained alive with holiday movement, but within the apartment, time seemed to slow, allowing each exchange to settle fully before the next began. Maren spoke first, picking up on a question Serena had asked earlier about her work. Her voice held clarity and quiet enthusiasm as she explained her creative process. She described how her art had evolved over the years, shaped by travel, solitude, and observation. Each piece, she said, was less about perfection and more about expression, about honoring growth rather than resisting change. Adrian listened attentively. He remembered this side of her well, the way she spoke with purpose, how her ideas carried both structure and emotion. He found himself admiring her dedication, not with longing, but with respect. It was the admiration one feels when witnessing someone fully committed to their path. That takes discipline, Adrian said thoughtfully. Not just talent, but consistency. Maren smiled. It took time to learn that. Passion alone doesn't sustain you. You have to show up, even when inspiration doesn't. Serena nodded in agreement. That applies to more than creative work, she added. Commitment shapes everything worth building. Her comment wasn't pointed or symbolic. It was simply true, and the ease with which she contributed reinforced the sense that nothing was being measured or compared at this table. The conversation shifted naturally to Adrian's work. He spoke about leadership challenges, about guiding people through uncertainty, and about learning when to listen rather than direct. Serena added insights of her own, referencing moments where balance mattered more than authority. Their exchange reflected partnership, not hierarchy. Maren observed quietly. The way they spoke to one another revealed familiarity built through shared experience. There was no need for explanation between them. Each understood the other's rhythm, stepping in and out of conversation with ease. At one point, Maren mentioned a memory from years earlier, a group project during their studies, one that had gone unexpectedly well. She laughed lightly, recalling how everyone had underestimated the outcome. "I remember that," Adrian said. "You stayed up all night finishing the visuals." Maren smiled. "You brought coffee and tried to help." Serena smiled as well, not excluded from the memory, but included in its telling. There was no discomfort, only acknowledgement. The past was referenced, not revisited. That balance mattered. As the meal continued, moments of quiet reflection emerged between dialogue. Forks paused mid-air, glances met briefly, then returned to the conversation. These silences weren't heavy. They were comfortable, shaped by mutual awareness. Adrian noticed how Serena guided these moments gently. When conversation risked lingering too long in memory, she redirected it with curiosity toward the present. When tension flickered briefly, subtle, fleeting, she eased it without drawing attention. Her emotional awareness was steady, unforced. He found himself deeply appreciative of her presence, not because she controlled the environment, but because she understood it. Her confidence did not compete with anyone else's space. It created room for everyone to exist comfortably. Halfway through the evening, this is a moment for viewers to reflect as well. Situations like this are rarely about who speaks the loudest or avoids the topic altogether. They are about reading the room, honoring boundaries, and choosing respect over assumption. If you believe trust carries more strength than insecurity, take a moment to like and share this story. Your support helps meaningful stories reach more people who value emotional growth. Dessert was served simply. Conversation softened, voices lowering slightly as the evening deepened. The music in the background remained gentle, its rhythm blending seamlessly with the tone of the room. Maren spoke again, this time about learning to let go of expectations. She described how early in her career, she believed every decision needed to lead somewhere specific. Over time, she learned that growth often comes from uncertainty rather than certainty. Serena listened attentively. "That takes humility," she said. "Accepting that not everything unfolds according to plan." Adrian nodded. He recognized the truth in both perspectives. Leadership, relationships, and personal development all required the same skill, knowing when to hold firm and when to allow change. As the conversation continued, Adrian reflected inwardly. The evening had taught him something important, not just about trust, but about emotional maturity. Avoiding discomfort does not build strength. Facing it with composure does. He realized that the tension he had feared was never rooted in Maren's presence. It had been rooted in his own assumptions about what trust required. Serena had shown him, through action rather than words, that trust is not fragile. It grows stronger when tested thoughtfully. Maren, too, seemed at ease. The closure she sought did not come from words exchanged, but from what she witnessed. The respect between Adrian and Serena was evident, not asserted. It existed naturally, expressed through tone, timing, and shared understanding. As plates were cleared and the table gradually emptied, the atmosphere felt complete. Not dramatic, not unresolved, simply complete. The lesson of the evening settled quietly. Maturity is not about erasing the past, but about placing it properly. Respect allows memories to exist without power. Humility reminds us that growth is ongoing. And trust, when chosen consistently, creates space for honesty without fear. Dinner ended not with finality, but with calm satisfaction. The kind that comes from navigating a complex moment with grace. And that, in itself, was a quiet victory. If you feel that respect and honesty are stronger than insecurity in relationships, give this video a like. Share your experiences in the comments about times trust helped you overcome a challenging moment, and subscribe to Lord of Hearts for more stories with meaningful life lessons. The transition from the dining area to the living room happened naturally, without announcement or ceremony. Plates were cleared, chairs pushed back softly, and the low hum of conversation shifted as the evening found a quieter rhythm. The living room glowed with warmth, anchored by the Christmas tree standing tall near the window. Its lights were subtle rather than bright, casting a steady shimmer that reflected gently off glass ornaments and polished surfaces. Serena moved first, setting mugs on the coffee table, the faint aroma of cocoa rising as steam curled upward. She handed one to Maren with an easy smile, then another to Adrian. The gesture was simple, but it carried intention, the kind that comes from thoughtfulness rather than obligation. They settled into their seats, the atmosphere noticeably lighter now that the formal structure of dinner had passed. The couch provided closeness without pressure. Adrian and Serena sat side by side, their shoulders barely touching, while Maren took the armchair opposite them. The arrangement felt balanced, respectful of space, yet intimate enough to allow connection. The music shifted slightly, softer now, its melody blending with the faint sounds of the city outside. The tree lights flickered gently, creating a visual calm that encouraged reflection. Serena wrapped her hands around her mug, warming her fingers. "This is my favorite part of the evening," she said quietly. When everything slows down, Adrian smiled, his hand resting naturally on his knee, close enough to Serena's that it felt intentional. "I know," he replied. "It's when the noise fades." Maren listened, observing more than speaking. She watched the way Adrian turned slightly towards Serena when she spoke, how Serena met his gaze without hesitation. Their communication didn't rely on elaborate expressions. It existed in pauses, in tone, in familiarity. Adrian reached for Serena's hand without looking. The movement was instinctive, unforced. Their fingers intertwined gently, a gesture so natural it seemed less like a choice and more like a shared habit. Serena squeezed his hand once, a subtle acknowledgement that carried more meaning than words. They spoke quietly about ordinary things, plans for the rest of the holiday season, moments they looked forward to, small traditions they had built together. None of it was performative. It was simply theirs. At one point, Serena leaned her head lightly against Adrian's shoulder. He adjusted slightly, accommodating her without breaking the flow of conversation. The movement was almost imperceptible, but it spoke volumes about comfort and care. Maren felt something settle within her as she watched them. Not discomfort, not envy. Something closer to clarity. What she was witnessing wasn't a display meant to impress or exclude. It was genuine connection, built through consistency and respect. She realized then that the bond between them wasn't defined by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was shaped by quiet moments like this. Shared warmth, unspoken understanding, patience. Adrian glanced toward Maren briefly, offering a small smile. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said sincerely. "It means a lot that we could share this space comfortably." Maren nodded. "I'm glad too," she replied. "It's peaceful." Serena smiled at that word. "Peace is underrated," she said softly. As the evening continued, conversation thinned, replaced by reflective silence. The cocoa cooled slowly, mugs resting forgotten on the table. The tree lights continued their steady glow, illuminating the room in gentle hues. Adrian found himself reflecting inwardly. The night had unfolded differently than he'd once imagined, not because circumstances had changed, but because he had. He recognized now that trust wasn't something to guard tightly. It was something to practice daily, through actions and presence. Serena's hand remained in his, her thumb brushing lightly against his knuckles. The gesture was small, almost absent-minded, but it grounded him. It reminded him of the strength found in simplicity. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I appreciate you," he said quietly. "Not just tonight. Always." Serena turned to face him fully, her expression warm but composed. "I know," she replied, "and I appreciate you too. We choose each other every day. That's what matters." The words weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. They were steady, rooted in shared experience rather than promise. Maren watched this exchange with a sense of completion she hadn't anticipated. Whatever questions she had carried into the evening had been answered, not through explanation, but through observation. She saw clearly now that what Adrian and Serena shared was not fragile. It was secure, nurtured through mutual respect and emotional awareness. She realized that her role in their story was no longer active. It belonged to the past, acknowledged but no longer influential. And that realization brought relief rather than loss. Eventually, Maren stood, wrapping her scarf around her shoulders. "I should head out," she said gently. "Thank you for the evening." Serena rose with her, offering a warm embrace that felt genuine, not obligatory. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Travel safely." Adrian walked Maren to the door. Their exchange was brief, respectful. No lingering words, no unresolved tension. Just mutual acknowledgement and closure. When the door closed behind her, the apartment settled into quiet again. Adrian returned to the living room, where Serena remained by the tree. He joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. She leaned into him naturally, resting her head against his chest. They stood there for a moment, saying nothing. The silence felt full, not empty. "This was a good night," Serena said finally. "Yes," Adrian agreed. "It was." They didn't analyze it further. They didn't need to. The meaning was already understood. The lesson lingered in the warmth of the room. Love is not proven through control or comparison. It is shown through patience, through trust, through the quiet consistency of simple gestures, through hands held without fear, through presence offered freely. As the tree lights continued to glow, Adrian and Serena remained together, grounded in the certainty that what they shared was not defined by circumstance, but by choice. The hallway remained quiet after the door closed behind Maren, the soft click echoing briefly before fading. For a moment, no one moved. The apartment felt different, not empty but settled, as though a chapter had reached its natural conclusion and gently folded itself away. Maren paused just outside, adjusting her coat, allowing herself one last breath before stepping into the cold night. Her thoughts were clear in a way she hadn't expected when she arrived earlier that evening. There was no confusion, no lingering ache. What remained was gratitude. Gratitude for honesty. Gratitude for being welcomed without hostility. Gratitude for seeing with her own eyes that the past no longer competed with the present. She turned back briefly, pressing her palm lightly against the door, not to reopen it, but to acknowledge what had been shared within those walls. Then she stepped away, her footsteps steady as she moved down the corridor and out into the softly lit street below. Snow had begun to fall, light and unhurried, dusting the sidewalks and rooftops. She smiled faintly, pulled her scarf closer, and continued on her way, carrying closure rather than regret. Inside, Adrian exhaled slowly, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He stood still for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the apartment, the distant sounds of the city muted by snowfall. When he turned, Serena was watching him, her expression calm and reassuring. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah. I feel lighter." She walked toward him, closing the space between them without hesitation. "Me too," she said. Tonight mattered. They moved back into the living room together, the Christmas tree still glowing softly, its lights reflected in the window glass. Outside, snowflakes drifted downward, catching the light from the street lamps below. The world beyond felt hushed, as if giving them space to reflect. Adrian sat on the couch and Serena joined him, tucking her legs beneath her comfortably. For a while, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful, layered with unspoken understanding. "I was nervous about tonight," Adrian admitted finally. "More than I wanted to admit." Serena nodded, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. "I know. But you trusted the process. And you trusted me." He turned slightly toward her. "That's what I learned the most," he said. "Trust isn't passive, it's active. It's choosing to believe in what we've built, even when the situation tests it." Serena smiled, her hand finding his. "And emotional intelligence," she added gently, "is knowing when to react and when to remain grounded." Adrian chuckled softly. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple," she replied. "But it's worth practicing." They reflected on the evening together, not dissecting every moment, but acknowledging the growth it represented. The fact that they could host someone from Adrian's past without insecurity taking control spoke volumes about the strength of their relationship. It wasn't about pretending discomfort didn't exist. It was about facing it with maturity. Adrian thought about how differently the night could have gone. He realized that resilience in relationships isn't built during easy seasons. It's built during moments that require patience, humility, and honest communication. Serena shifted slightly, looking up at him. "I'm proud of us," she said. "Not because everything was perfect, but because we handled it with integrity." He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I'm proud of you," he replied. "Your calm, your grace, it set the tone for everything." Outside, the snow fell more steadily now, blanketing the city in white. Adrian stood and walked to the window, Serena joining him moments later. They stood side by side, watching the flakes drift down, each one unique, each one temporary, yet collectively transformative. "This feels like a reset," Adrian said quietly. "It is," Serena agreed. "Not an ending, a reinforcement." They wrapped their arms around each other, sharing a long embrace that required no words. The warmth between them contrasted beautifully with the cold scene outside, a reminder that connection is not dependent on circumstance, but on intention. Adrian rested his chin lightly atop Serena's head. "Thank you for trusting me," he said, "and for reminding me who I want to be." Serena tightened her arms around him slightly. "We remind each other," she said. "That's what partnership looks like." They remained there for several moments, the snow continuing its gentle descent, the tree lights glowing steadily behind them. The world felt calm, as though acknowledging the quiet victory of emotional growth. The lessons of the evening lingered clearly. Integrity means acting in alignment with your values, even when emotions are involved. Emotional intelligence means recognizing feelings without allowing them to dictate behavior. Resilience in relationships means choosing understanding over reaction, trust over fear. Adrian felt contentment settle deeply within him, not excitement, not relief alone, but a steady appreciation for what he had. He understood now that love is not threatened by the past when the present is built on honesty and mutual respect. Serena leaned back slightly, looking up at him with a soft smile. "We should probably get some rest," she said. "It's been a full day." He nodded. "Yeah, but I'm glad we took this moment." "So am I." They turned off the living room lights, leaving only the glow of the tree as they headed toward the bedroom. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in quiet beauty. Before closing the door behind them, Adrian glanced once more at the window, at the stillness beyond the glass. He felt gratitude, not just for the night, but for the journey that had brought them here. As the scene fades, one truth remains clear: love thrives where trust is nurtured, where patience is practiced, and where simple gestures speak louder than fear. If this story made you reflect on trust, love, or emotional growth, share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters. And if you value stories that explore life lessons through meaningful moments, subscribe for more narratives that speak to the heart. Several days had passed since Christmas Eve, yet the quiet weight of that evening lingered with Adrian in an unexpected way. The holiday rush had settled. Decorations still stood, though some ornaments had been carefully returned to their boxes, and the apartment had returned to its familiar rhythm. Morning light filtered through the windows as Adrian sat alone in his study, coffee untouched beside him, his thoughts steady but focused inward. He was not replaying the night with anxiety or regret. Instead, he examined it with clarity. Distance had granted him perspective, and perspective revealed meaning. At work, his days were once again filled with meetings, strategic decisions, and performance metrics. Employees greeted him with the same respect they always had. The company moved forward without pause. Yet, internally, something had shifted. The dinner had not disrupted his life. It had refined it. Adrian leaned back in his chair, folding his hands as he reflected on the choice he had made to invite Maren. At the time, the decision felt delicate, even risky. Now, it felt deliberate and honest. He realized that leadership was not limited to boardrooms and balance sheets. It also applied to personal life. how one navigates complex emotions, how one treats people from the past, and how one protects what matters most without fear-driven reactions. What stood out most was not Marin's presence, but Serena's response. Her composure, her confidence, her refusal to allow insecurity to dictate her behavior had left a lasting impression on him. It reminded Adrian that emotional maturity is not loud. It does not demand control. It creates stability. He recalled Serena's calm voice as they decorated the apartment days before Christmas, the ease with which she acknowledged the situation without dismissing its sensitivity. She had not minimized his discomfort, nor had she amplified it. She had simply trusted him. That trust had required courage. Adrian understood something fundamental in those quiet moments of reflection. Trust is not blind. It is informed. Serena trusted him because he had earned it over time through consistency, transparency, and respect. That realization carried responsibility. Trust, once given, must be protected through actions, not promises. He thought briefly of Marin as well, not with longing, but with appreciation. Their past no longer felt unresolved. Seeing her step into his present life, even briefly, had confirmed what time had already shaped. Their connection belonged to a different chapter, one that had closed naturally. There was no loss in acknowledging that, only clarity. As Adrian stared out the window, watching the city return to its routine pace, he recognized how easily the situation could have turned into conflict had it been approached differently. Avoidance might have felt safer, but it would have left questions unanswered. Dishonesty would have planted doubt. Reactivity could have created damage. Instead, patience and open communication had transformed a potentially uncomfortable moment into one of growth. He picked up his coffee, now cooled, and took a slow sip. His thoughts moved toward the broader lesson the experience had offered. Emotional intelligence, he realized, is the ability to sit with discomfort without allowing it to define your choices. It is knowing when to speak and when to listen. It is choosing respect over defensiveness. That evening had reinforced his understanding of partnership. Marriage, at its strongest, is not about eliminating challenges. It is about navigating them together. Serena had not stood beside him as a passive observer. She had stood with him as an equal, confident, assured, and grounded in self-worth. Adrian felt gratitude settle deeply within him. Not the fleeting kind that passes quickly, but the steady kind that reshapes priorities. He had built a successful career, accumulated accomplishments that others admired, yet the most meaningful success was quieter. It lived in the trust shared between him and his wife, in the mutual decision to handle life with integrity. As he rose from his chair and prepared to start his day, Adrian carried this reflection with him. The dinner was no longer an event to analyze. It was a reminder that love is strengthened through honesty, that confidence in a relationship allows space for maturity, and that facing life with composure leads to peace rather than conflict. This understanding would stay with him, not as a lesson learned once, but as a principle to practice daily. Adrian's reflections naturally led him to consider the deeper lessons embedded in that evening. Beyond the personal satisfaction of navigating a sensitive situation successfully, he recognized universal truths that viewers could apply to their own lives. These lessons were not abstract, they were grounded in tangible choices and behaviors. The first moral was trust as a foundation for lasting relationships. Adrian understood that trust is more than blind faith. It is earned through consistency, transparency, and mutual respect. It allows partners to navigate potentially awkward situations without fear, knowing that the bond between them is secure. This principle extended beyond marriage. It was relevant in friendships, work partnerships, and family dynamics. When trust is nurtured, even moments that could provoke doubt become opportunities to strengthen connections. The second moral was emotional intelligence as a guiding principle. Adrian realized that handling tense or delicate scenarios requires awareness of self, of others, and of the emotions in the room. Serena's measured responses had exemplified this perfectly. She neither suppressed her feelings nor let them dictate her actions. She acknowledged, processed, and responded thoughtfully. Emotional intelligence, he concluded, transforms potential conflicts into moments of understanding and growth. The third lesson was patience. as an expression of love. Nothing had been rushed that night. Conversations unfolded at their own pace, silences were comfortable rather than uncomfortable, and gestures were subtle yet meaningful. Love, Adrian realized, often reveals itself not in dramatic proclamations, but in patient attentiveness, in letting others exist authentically without judgment or haste. The fourth moral was resilience through integrity. Choosing honesty over avoidance, choosing openness over secrecy, had prevented tension from escalating. It reminded Adrian that relationships are tested not in moments of comfort, but in moments of subtle challenge. True resilience is built when people confront complexity with care, choosing integrity even when easier alternatives exist. Finally, Adrian recognized the importance of appreciation and presence. The smallest gestures, a touch, a smile, a shared cup of cocoa, carried immense power. Life often demands big decisions, but the quiet, everyday expressions of love define the strength and depth of any partnership. Appreciating these moments allows relationships to flourish naturally, rather than forcing validation through words or grand acts alone. By framing these lessons explicitly, Adrian saw how the story of that Christmas dinner could resonate with others. It wasn't just about one family or one evening. It was a demonstration of principles anyone could practice: trust actively, respond with awareness, embrace patience, uphold integrity, and cherish simple expressions of love. As Adrian continued his reflection, he saw the evening through the lens of the holiday season. Christmas had always symbolized more than festivity. For him, it represented generosity of spirit, giving without expectation, and embracing warmth even in complex situations. The dinner with Maren, rather than overshadowing the holiday, had reinforced its true meaning. He realized that giving does not always involve material gifts. Inviting Maren had been a form of giving space, understanding, and closure. It required courage and emotional generosity, extending kindness beyond convenience. The act reminded him that generosity can exist in thoughtfulness and actions, not just objects or celebrations. Trust, central to the night's success, tied seamlessly into the season's spirit. Just as families gather and share openly during Christmas, trust allows hearts to remain open even when uncertainty exists. Serena's confidence in their relationship was the embodiment of this principle. She gave Adrian the gift of her belief in him, while he reciprocated by navigating the evening honestly and thoughtfully. Together, they demonstrated that trust strengthens connections and enables moments of peace and joy. Love, the core of the season, was evident not in spectacle but in subtle gestures. The warmth of shared cocoa, a hand held at just the right moment, a reassuring glance across the room. These quiet expressions underscored the depth of their bond. Adrian understood that the true spirit of Christmas is mirrored in love that is steady, patient, and present. The most meaningful celebrations are those that honor relationships as much as tradition. Finally, generosity of emotion revealed itself in both intent and impact. By hosting Maren with openness, they practiced emotional generosity, allowing everyone at the table to experience respect, warmth, and connection. There was no jealousy, no competition, only space for authentic interaction. This emotional giving reinforced the idea that true generosity encompasses understanding, compassion, and empathy for others' experiences. In tying these elements together, Adrian saw that Christmas was not just a date on a calendar or a series of decorations and gifts. It was a mindset, a commitment to giving thoughtfully, trusting fully, loving deliberately, and sharing generously. The holiday amplified these principles, but their relevance extended beyond the season, serving as a guide for life and relationships throughout the year. The days following that Christmas evening carried a quiet serenity that Adrian and Serena had not fully anticipated. Life returned to its familiar rhythm: work responsibilities, daily routines, and social obligations. But the experience of that night lingered as a quiet, sustaining presence in their hearts. For Adrian, the reflections continued, not as obsessive replaying, but as an internal map of growth, love, and wisdom. He thought back to the way the evening had unfolded, noticing how every small detail, The careful arrangement of the dinner table, the subtle glow of the tree lights, the warmth of cocoa in their hands, had contributed to an environment of comfort and respect. These details, seemingly minor, were reminders that love is often expressed in small, intentional actions rather than grandiose gestures. They set the tone for the night, creating space for trust to flourish and for tension to dissolve naturally. Adrian found himself smiling more often, even during busy workdays, recalling Serena's calm assurance and the way she had held herself with quiet confidence. Her presence had been a guiding force, reminding him that emotional maturity is not just about controlling feelings, but about managing them thoughtfully. Her behavior had illuminated a truth he now embraced fully: patience, trust, and empathy are the strongest pillars of enduring relationships. As he reflected, he recognized that love and connection are not defined by past relationships or fleeting emotions, but by consistency, presence, and care. The night had been a living demonstration of this principle. Marin's visit, though initially daunting, had become a moment of closure for all involved. It reminded Adrian that sometimes challenges are opportunities in disguise, designed to reinforce understanding, compassion, and mutual respect. Serena, noticing Adrian's contemplative smile during a quiet morning together, placed her hand lightly over his. "You've been thinking about it again, haven't you?" she asked, her tone gentle but knowing. He nodded. "It's just, everything that night showed me how strong we really are, how much we can trust each other, and how love is about choosing one another every single day." Her smile deepened, a quiet affirmation of shared understanding. "Exactly," she replied, "and that choice is a gift we give to each other, just as we give to others in our lives." Adrian leaned back, reflecting further on the morals embedded in the evening's experience. Trust, patience, integrity, and emotional intelligence were not abstract ideals, they were actionable behaviors that shaped real relationships. By practicing these consistently, couples could face potential friction with grace, navigate uncomfortable situations with confidence, and emerge with stronger bonds. These principles extended beyond romantic relationships, applying to friendships, family dynamics, and even professional partnerships. He also realized the subtle but powerful impact of gestures that show love through action rather than words alone. The gentle squeeze of a hand, the acknowledgement of presence, the unspoken reassurance of a smile, all had contributed to the evening's harmony. These small acts demonstrated commitment and respect more profoundly than any declaration could. They were reminders that love thrives when nurtured quietly and deliberately. Adrian turned his thoughts to the broader lesson for anyone watching or reflecting on similar experiences. Handling delicate social situations with honesty, empathy, and composure creates not only peace but growth. Avoidance or insecurity only undermines relationships, while thoughtful engagement builds resilience. By approaching potential tension with openness and care, even situations that might have caused conflict can become opportunities for shared understanding. The Christmas spirit, interwoven with the evening, had enhanced these lessons. Giving without expectation, sharing joy, extending kindness, and maintaining presence were principles that defined both the season and enduring relationships. Adrian and Serena had practiced all of these, showing that the true essence of Christmas goes beyond material gifts and decorations. It is about generosity of heart, attentiveness, and connection. As Adrian reflected, he found joy not only in his personal growth, but also in the gratitude he felt for Serena. She had not only supported him through a challenging situation, but had modeled the qualities he now admired and sought to emulate consistently. Love, he realized, is reciprocal. It is as much about being open to giving and receiving trust, patience, and kindness as it is about shared affection. The experience had also reinforced the idea that closure is essential for emotional well-being. Marin's presence had been handled with respect, ensuring that past relationships were honored without overshadowing the present. This allowed everyone involved to feel acknowledged yet unburdened, demonstrating that clarity and consideration can transform potentially tense interactions into opportunities for peace and mutual appreciation. Even days later, Adrian found that the lessons continued to inform his actions. He approached conversations with colleagues more mindfully, listened with greater patience, and appreciated the subtle gestures of his loved ones more fully. He understood that emotional intelligence is not situational, it is a habit cultivated over time, consistently reinforced by reflection and intention. Serena, observing Adrian's quiet contentment, felt her own sense of fulfillment. Their partnership had strengthened, not because obstacles had been removed, but because they had faced them together with integrity and grace. The evening had become a shared memory of growth, a benchmark for how they could handle future challenges with composure and love. In sharing these reflections with viewers, the story offers practical takeaways. Trust actively, believe in the foundation of your relationships and protect it through honesty and consistency. Exercise emotional intelligence, pause, listen, and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Practice patience, allow moments to unfold naturally, understanding that love often resides in subtle, unhurried interactions. Honor integrity, face challenges with openness rather than avoidance, demonstrating respect for yourself and others. Celebrate simple gestures, small acts of care, presence, and reassurance often speak louder than grand declarations. Embrace closure. Acknowledge past relationships or events respectfully, allowing the present to flourish without lingering tension. Apply generosity of heart. Give kindness, attention, and understanding freely, especially during meaningful occasions or emotional challenges. Adrian and Serena's story serves as a reminder that love is not defined by moments of perfection, but by consistent, thoughtful engagement. It teaches that true partnership is not about eliminating tension, but navigating it with maturity, grace, and shared respect. As snow continued to fall lightly outside the window, Adrian and Serena stood together once more, hand in hand. The city beyond glimmered under holiday lights, yet their focus remained on one another, grounded in the confidence that their relationship was secure, resilient, and enriched by shared experiences. Adrian spoke softly, as if narrating, not just to himself but to anyone willing to listen. Love is strengthened not when everything is easy, but when it is faced with understanding and care. It is proven in quiet moments, thoughtful actions, and unwavering trust. Serena smiled, her hand brushing lightly against his cheek. And when we carry that into every day, every challenge, every celebration, it transforms our life together. The evening, the snow, and the reflections coalesced into a sense of profound contentment. The story had reached its natural conclusion, leaving behind clarity, lessons, and inspiration for viewers. It illustrated that relationships thrive on trust, that emotional maturity strengthens bonds, and that generosity, whether in gestures, words, or intentions, is always reciprocated. To the audience, the message is clear: trust deeply, act thoughtfully, appreciate quietly, and approach life and love with intentionality. Share your experiences of trust, love, and patience in the comments. Tell us how you navigate delicate situations with grace. Like and share this story if it resonates, and subscribe for more narratives that explore life lessons through compelling moments. The Christmas lights outside glimmered, the snow settled softly, and Adrian and Serena remained together, embracing not only each other but the profound understanding of love's quiet strength. In that glow, viewers are invited to reflect on their own relationships, to practice generosity of spirit, and to remember that the most meaningful gifts are often intangible: trust, patience, respect, and unwavering commitment. If Adrian and Serena's story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments below about trust, love, and handling delicate situations. Hit the like button. If you believe in the power of patience and emotional intelligence in relationships, share this story with friends and family who need a reminder of love's quiet strength, and subscribe to Lord of Hearts for more uplifting narratives that teach life lessons while touching the heart. Stay connected, and let every story guide you towards stronger, more meaningful relationships.